Good evening, everybody. It's Mark Oldop, Sky Halpern here on the Sports Insanity Network. We are back for part 2 of 3 of our draft preview. And this week we have the man himself. No, it's not the pun master. No, it's not the vice president. We have our
Well, we
guest.
are here though.
Well, yeah, well, I'll get to you guys eventually. We have our guest, Rudy Campos from Sweep the League. Rudy, good evening. How are you?
Evening, guys. Thanks for having me, man. Good to be back finally.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. As most of you have listened to, we did a picks 1 through 10 last week, in which Mike, Dan, and I recorded, and then Rudy had a segment attached along with it with Dan's smooth melding video technique and audio work. Dan made sure it worked beautifully. And we're going to do this week. We're doing 11 through 21. Next week, the final, and then the week after that, we will be doing our show for the day itself. As again, Nate Moser screws it up because 2 of these guys are going to be at the wedding, but that's okay. That still leaves me around.
Jerk move on his part.
So,
and you know what, the
we're gonna
Buffalo
kick it.
Bills served him right by trading Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, he's still heartbroken over it.
That was the punishment. You screw up the draft, you lose things.
Yeah. And by the way, he can say all he wants about how he's happy and excited for the future. BS, you're not.
But now we're going to kick it over to the man who runs it smoothly. Mike, you ready to take it over from where we left off at 11?
Let's go. So as Mark mentioned, we went 1 through 10 last week. If you want, you can go back and listen to that episode. This week we'll do 11 through 21. Next week we'll cap it off. All right. The Minnesota Vikings are technically the team on the clock here at 11. Rudy, I'll start with you. Where do you think the Vikings go here if you have the Vikings picking here?
So the Vikings are picking right here. I mean, obviously you're going to need with no Kirk Cousins there. Obviously he's in Atlanta now. Quarterback's the main thing. Now, with them having 11 and 23, obviously getting 23rd pick from the Houston Texans, everybody's pointing them moving up on the draft, obviously trading both picks for probably a top 3 pick. But for the fact that they're not actually doing a trade in this draft, in my opinion, for the mock draft that we're doing now, at 11, I have them going with, and I hate to say this because y'all guys might be fans, but I have them going with JJ McCarthy at 11, being drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, quarterback out of Michigan. I honestly don't see a lot of what people see in McCarthy. I had probably maybe a late second, third, fourth round grade on him coming into the draft. So all the hype you're seeing from McCarthy, a lot of it is pushed, in my opinion, by Jim Harbaugh. But it's enough to get Minnesota to draft him at number 11. I've got JJ McCarthy, quarterback from Michigan, going to Minnesota at 11.
Let me ask you this before I move it on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe I understand what you're saying on Harbaugh because I agree with you. I'm not a big JJ McCarthy guy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he's the guy who has to sit a whole year and watch Sam Darnold play, or is it they have to instill him right away?
So my thing is, excuse me, Sam Darnold's going to be the bridge. I think you're going to see Sam Darnold start as the quarterback, the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings this year, barring if anything was to happen via trade or anything. But I think Darnold starts the year. You're going to see McCarthy slowly come in, unless he just has a tremendous preseason. He's just balling out. He has great connection. Or if Darnold gets hurt, then you're going to have to push McCarthy into the starting lineup. But for me right now, I think Darnold starts. One thing to keep an eye on, and I'm throwing this out there because of what we've been seeing transpire in Valley Ranch, is a lot of these teams that need a quarterback, you can best assure that they're calling Jerry right now about Dak only because he wasn't signed to that extension that he was looking for. So because Dak's going into his final year of his deal, you're going to have a lot of teams calling Jerry if they haven't already all the way through the draft to see Dak's availability. So keep that in mind. But definitely McCarthy is a guy that you're going to probably end up seeing starting towards the end part of the year. Unless Minnesota is just balling with Darnold, with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, I expect McCarthy to kind of go the Aaron Rodgers route.
It also wouldn't surprise me, given one, I know Sam Darnold in and out.
Is he still seeing ghosts?
Yes, he does. But you know what? He's a Ghostbuster. But
Just,
I'm telling you,
just
but I'm
like
telling you,
Valkyrie.
Sam Darnold is not a bad quarterback.
No, he's not.
He just needs the right system. I don't know if he'll get the right system in Minnesota, but I mean, you never know. So no, if JJ McCarthy goes that route, which I don't think he does, I think the Giants beat the Giants and they take him early. I think that it is going to have to be a situation where you're going to have to sit down and watch for at least a year.
All right, so
Yeah.
Dan, where do you have the Vikings going, or whoever you have picking here to love?
So I still have the Patriots. I have the Vikings trading up for Drake May. It's probably not going to happen, but in my wildest dreams, I'll pretend. I have the Patriots going tackle on this one, and I'll just say for J.C. Latham, it's gonna be a big one for him. Another Alabama guy that the Patriots draft, and probably be a stud.
All right, old ops guy. You want to respond to the Dak comments first, or do you want to make this pick first?
I'll be very honest. I think you have invested so much money in Dak Prescott that you let him walk this year. It's a mistake. Next year, you're not guaranteeing owing him anything. So putting it on him. If he's not in the NFC Championship game this year, Dak won't be there next year in Dallas. That being said, I had actually with Rudy, believe it or not, I had actually traded this pick. I had Minnesota making a trade with the Chargers for Minnesota to move up to get JJ McCarthy. And right now on the other side of the ball for the Chargers, we just have Quentin Nelson there really catching passes. Really not much there. And with Neighbors and already off on the field and Romeo's already off the field, I see Brian Thomas Jr. coming in here and playing on the opposite side with Herbert. I think he brings a little bit of extra speed than what Quentin does. I think the two of them will have a much of a fun time the way Herbert can sling the ball.
I wanted to make a quick comment real quick.
Go.
So if you look at the first 11 picks, and this is my opinion on it, people say that they want to trade up to get JJ McCarthy, but there's really, if you look at the system, Caleb's going one because, I mean, obviously the Bears are going to bear and they're going to just take Caleb Williams. As much as people probably say don't do it, they're going to do it. Right now, I mean, Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury go together, like salt and pepper. They're that's the quarterback that I believe Cliff Kingsbury wants. If anybody trades down, it's going to be the Patriots, in my opinion. With Gerard Mayo there, I think he's going to go full rebuild in New England. I personally think he trades down and probably gives Minnesota what they want, that maybe being Drake May or JJ McCarthy at 3. But if Minnesota is smart, you really got the first 3 teams only that are quarterback needy. And to be honest, I don't even think New England may even take a QB at 3. Mayo's already said that he's satisfied with Jacoby Brissett for the next year, that he would be okay with Brissett starting in New England, meaning that he could probably go out and get a Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3. You get your playmaker already set up for your future quarterback, come back in the draft later and get another quarterback like a Michael Pratt or somebody. But Minnesota really doesn't have to panic. They shouldn't have to give up both picks to move up into the top 3 because either McCarthy or May could easily fall to them because after that, there's really no team other than the Giants. But I mean, Dable's kind of already invested in Daniel Jones the way that the Cowboys are invested in Prescott. So it's kind of like I think the Giants would wait to get a QB, which means one of those guys should be there at 11, which means Minnesota to me doesn't have to really move anywhere to get a quarterback for the future.
Right, because Cousins going to Atlanta erases them out of that concept.
Exactly.
And then all you're really worried about is the potential of Denver or the Raiders moving up, which is a whole nother conversation. But to go off to your point, because I'm with Dan, I had Minnesota move up to 3. Drake May goes in there. New England trades down. I think the point you made, New England's also not a quarterback away. They
Exactly.
need a roster full of players because I said it last week and I'll continue to say it. I think if you look at New England and you look at the Giants, you're looking at the 2 worst receiver rooms in the NFL. Like there is not a lot of talent on either side. That's why I think New England. Brought up the point about Mayo saying, "Well, I'm okay with Jacoby Brissett playing this year."
Mhm.
Well, that in my mind meant one of two things: they really like one of the receivers, or if they're trading down, project quarterback. In my mind, the definition of project quarterback in this draft is Bo Nix.
Exactly.
And I like Bo Nix, but we've seen it time and time again with Oregon quarterbacks. Shout out Joey Harrington. They don't pan out. But I think if you sit Bo Nix down, he's got a little bit of an upside here.
Mhm.
And Jacoby Brissett, he's not going to light the world on fire, but he's a proven veteran. And what he did for Washington last year, despite I think Ron Rivera failing Sam Howell, what he did in Miami backing up Tua, consummate pro. He will do his best to take a young quarterback, whether it's Bo Nix, McCarthy, Michael Penix under his wing. I got Bo Nix to New England here at 11.
Yeah, Bo Nix, to be honest, the Bo Nix talk that you're giving is spot on. Actually, Bo Nix right now is probably my number one QB going into this draft.
Wow.
I know people say he's old, he's been in college forever. To me, that doesn't mean anything.
So
In
was
fact,
Rodney
that's positive.
Dangerfield and back to school.
Exactly, great point. But you also mentioned like Joey Harrington. I mean, one of the great, great quarterback busts back
Detroit.
in the day, and was he a bust? I mean, he had very small glimpses, but then you also talk about a guy like Marcus Mariota who had some success coming out of
Yeah.
Oregon. But where these guys kind of are different when it comes to Bo is that Bo's first 3 years was at Auburn, and he's gotten the pleasure of playing under two different styles of offense. He's improved year after year. I mean, I think he threw for over 6,000, 7,000 yards while he was at Auburn. Started as a true freshman in 2019. Then he goes to Oregon. He puts up like 3,900 yards and over 4,500 yards in his last season. So I think Bo Nix is the more polished quarterback coming into this draft. If you're looking for a day one starter, depending on which team he goes to, because he needs an offensive line, obviously, to protect him. Plus, he needs receivers. To me, Bo Nix to the Vikings makes the utmost greatest sense in the world. Two great receivers. You got TJ Hawkinson there. You got an offensive line that you can easily work around. To me, Bo Nix to Minnesota works. But again, for whatever reason, JJ McCarthy is a sexy pick for the Vikings.
Well, let me just follow up and then we'll move on. The winning factor of McCarthy has to matter for teams. Michigan being in the playoff the last 2 years, albeit we could talk about Blake Corum or the dominant defense or khaki pants Harbaugh, however you want to go about it. Quarterbacks rule the world.
Yeah. I think defense is the reason why Michigan won the title this year. But if you look at McCarthy, he was just a
he's a game manager.
He's a game manager. He's and I'm not disrespecting Brock Purdy in any way. Brock Purdy's not a game manager. He's an actual baller in the NFL. But if you go look at a guy like JJ McCarthy, he's Kirk Cousins 2.0 is what they're saying. But I even go back to as far as, for old guys like me and Mark. I mean, Mark, I know you're older like me, you're old guy. So you
Yes.
go back in the days of
I have it in the name too, so they definitely, in case they didn't know, they can see it.
like JJ McCarthy to me reminds me a lot of probably like a Bernie Kosar from back in the day. Just to get the job done. He's not gonna hoe and hum you. He's not gonna be this great quarterback. He's just gonna get you wins when need be. But where he's gonna really hurt is the fact that if he doesn't have a defense backing him, you're gonna see a lot more losses and a lot more unsuccessful games.
I'm just happy you said Bernie Kosar, not Bernie Madoff.
Shout out Bernie Kosar came into that Dallas wild card divisional game against San Francisco and pushed them on back then.
All right, Mark. Denver's on the clock at 12.
So I've been actually going back and forth a little bit with Denver on this, and considering the team is in a complete rebuild, to me, everyone's saying Sean Payton is going to be rebuilding that offense. I say they go defense here, and I like Terry and Arnold to play opposite side of Patrick Surtain. I think the two of them on the field would make probably the best two cornerback starting duo in football. young, hungry, athletic, and both can get great jumps on the ball. So I see easily them taking Terry on out of Alabama to help on the other side.
The only way that works is if when Roger Goodell walks to the podium and he goes, "Hey, football head," as a code for like "Hey, Arnold." I'm having fun. All right, Dan, what about you? Where are you on Denver here at 12?
Olaf's guy, I think we are both reading each other's minds. 'Cause I agree with you. I have Terrion Arnold going to Denver. They could use another big time guy in the secondary. And wouldn't it be lethal to build one of the biggest defenses in football? I mean, they already have a good one. You might as well just add to it. And I think it's a perfect pick.
Rudy?
So I'm actually sticking with you guys, but I'm actually doing my lead course on say not so fast. I love Terrion Arnold, but actually my number one cornerback in the draft is Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo, and that's who I have Denver taking. Raw talent, you know, and what's I like about him is he's probably the more athletic of the cornerbacks in this draft. What I really love the most is that he gets to learn side by side by Patrick Surtain. So you can afford to go out and get a Quinion Mitchell in this draft. I mean, he's a ball hawk. He's, you know, he's a freak as an athlete. So for Denver, I think they stick with the defensive side. I kind of played with the idea of maybe them taking probably a Liatu Latu out of UCLA. They could use an edge there as well. But I think with them, it's going to be a cornerback. Probably Terrion Arnold's probably going to be a guy that's on their board. But for me, I'm having him take Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo.
It's not a terrible pick, though. I mean,
No, not at all.
I think either one will do. I mean, cornerbacks are I can't say they're easy to find because they're not. Like not ones like the big timers. Like Dallas has a bunch of them. The Jets have Sauce, so it's like they're not easy to find like really good lethal ones. But you can always find one in the market that can be suitable in any defense.
Mm-hmm.
And the top of this draft, there's a lot of depth at corner. When you're talking Mitchell, Arnold, my favorite name, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Nate Wiggins out of Clemson as well, and there's others.
Next to He Hate Me, that's the next coolest name there is.
So last week I had Denver move up to 8 to take Rudy's guy, JJ McCarthy. So I've got Atlanta picking here. And I went defense like the other guys. I'm going Jared Verse for the Falcons. I think
Good
the Falcons
defensive edge.
had Calais Campbell last year. Raheem Morris is the new coach. My cousin Kirk, who's Mark's favorite quarterback, goes in
That was
there.
coming.
You need to find a way to get to Baker Mayfield and Bryce Young if he's going to turn into anything. So gives the Atlanta Falcons a good pass rusher here in Jared Verse.
Mhm.
All right. Dan, 13 is the Las Vegas Raiders of Oakland of Los Angeles. They can't find a city apparently, but they settled on Vegas.
As much as they think they have their quarterback, I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think they pick a quarterback here going against what draft experts are saying. A lot of them are saying offensive tackles or whatever. I'm going to go with the quarterback. And I believe the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Penix Jr. chosen
Interesting.
pretty high with the Raiders.
Okay. Mark?
Dan's right. A lot of the reports have been coming back that Oakland's going to be looking up to shore up the line. Names like J.C. Latham has been thrown out. But for me, I think right now they need that edge rusher. And that's where Jared Verse comes in for me. I see him being a prime fixture on that defense. I think they were one of the worst teams at getting to the quarterback, and that's what they need to add this year.
Rudy?
Yeah, so for me, I'm probably going different from you guys. Obviously, I'm not quarterback. I'm not doing the defensive side. I'm sticking to the offensive line for the Raiders. In order to give Devontae Adams time, you got to give your quarterback time. You got to allow him to get the ball to Devontae. So to me, I have them taking J.C. Latham, offensive tackle out of Alabama. Big, strong guy. He's going to be able to protect any quarterback they have back there right now. So I think they're going to go offensive line. They're going to just go back to the good old days of Raider football and just be brutal at the start at the line.
My thing on the Raiders is if a quarterback falls to them, they need to jump on it unless they love Aiden O'Connell. And by all accounts, I don't know if they love Aiden O'Connell.
But
The
if
other
there's one thing about Aiden O'Connell, Mike, is that his draft day picture looked like Tom Brady's draft day picture. So there were some similarities there.
I thought you were going to go with something based on him being a Purdue quarterback.
Oh
So
no.
that was past me. And then they bring in Christian Wilkins to beef up that defensive line. But their drafting of corners recently has been brutal. Just watch whatever video Damon Arnett posts in the next 24 hours if he's not in jail. I'm going Terrion Arnold here. You need to find a way to stop Mahomes and Herbert and John Elway, who's going to probably be quarterbacking for Denver. You know, so get yourself a number one corner. You got a decent pass rush. Eventually, they're going to have to get a quarterback, but I just don't know if they're willing to pay the price of moving up so high. All right. Rudy, I'll go to you with this one. 14 is the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, so the Saints, I mean, you're looking at Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, and they have Jamal Williams, Kendrick Miller. They're pretty set at running back. Derek Carr is going to have to be their guy for a little bit. They could use a help at the wide receiver spot. I know Shaheed and Olave are there, so I mean, you could wait on the pick there. Offensive line always another way to go, but this is where I see, an edge rusher come off. I like Liatu Latu out of UCLA right here. You've got to get New Orleans all the help you can get on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, this is one of those teams where it has a lot of holes to be filled, a lot of positions that need to be upgraded. What better way to start the upgrade with getting someone right next, to Cameron Jordan? And Leatu Latu is a very quick guy, very powerful edge rusher. He reminds me a lot of Zach Thomas from back in the day. So I think you really can't go wrong with that kind of player right here. It's a good pick for the New Orleans Saints. I think that's Leatu Latu, edge out of UCLA.
Okay. I went on the offensive line because you got to protect Derek Carr. You mentioned it before. You put a lot of assets into Derek Carr, and eventually they're going to need to turn some of those assets into wide receivers. That's a whole nother conversation. This is where I think a guy like J.C. Latham comes into play. Ryan Ramczyk, they've talked about he may not be able to play this year due to injuries. Derek Carr took a beating last year. Eventually
That's
screwing
being
up his
nice.
shoulder. Well, I'm keeping it clean. Unlike my texts to Patchy, I keep this clean. So I'm gonna go with J.C. Latham to protect Derek Carr. Mark.
Mike, you and I are on the same page here. This is where I have JC Latham going. Carr spent more time on the ground than Dirt does. So they definitely need more time to give him a chance to get that ball out to Olave and get Kamara back into the way he used to be, that dual running back out of the backfield, but also can catch that quick pass and get you some yardage.
Yeah, one thing on the Saints too, I love that they're going offensive line for you guys because that was my first pick. But once I started seeing a lot of the offensive line guys still available in the second round, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Saints have the 13th pick in round two as of right now. So I mean, you're still going to see guys like Amarius Mims, Jordan Morgan out of Arizona, Sumatia from BYU, Patrick Paul out of Houston. You still got interior offensive line guys like Cooper Beebe, Jackson Power Johnson. A lot of these guys are still going to be there in round two. And that's kind of why I swayed away from the offensive line because you're still going to get that quality. You're not getting a Joe Alt or a Fashanu, which that's kind of elite right there. You're going to still get that tier 2 type of offensive line, but nobody can argue with the picks that you guys made right here at all.
The one thing I will argue with, and this is nothing direct to anybody, I am unsure how Dennis Allen retained his job after last year
Mhm.
because I put the Saints in a similar category as I put Jacksonville last year. Now Jacksonville's excuse will be they won the division last year, so Doug Peterson's safe. Dennis Allen, it's playoffs or bust this year, bro,
Mhm.
with that team. All right, Dan, where are you on the Saints?
So I'm torn really between two players. I'm gonna choose Olufashanu for the Saints. Just so they can beef up that O-line. He's a good tackle. I think it fits perfect for them. And really does provide that protection, hopefully for Derek Carr, and hopefully Derek Carr can have a full season, a good season, nonetheless. But that remains to be seen. But I go O-line here.
Okay. All right, Rudy, 15 is the Indianapolis Colts. And American hero Anthony Richardson should be back.
Yeah, Richardson should be back, and hopefully he doesn't get injured again. That's kind of his rep right now. He gets injured pretty frequently, but needless to say, I mean, you still got Jonathan Taylor. I believe Michael Pittman re-signed there as well. So you got an offensive line you can work with Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly. I think they got to stick to the defensive side of the ball. Their number one thing right now they need is a cornerback. And again, with Quinion Mitchell already gone, the second best quarterback for me is Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. So I think the Colts go with Terrion Arnold. It gives them, some bolster on the secondary, which is what they really need.
The old ops guy.
This is where I see a big offensive player coming off for Anthony Richardson, who needs something over the middle, and this is where Brock Bowers comes in. He's got Michael Pittman. Pittman, I don't know if he was given the contract because he's done so well as long as he was in Indianapolis. I don't know if he was worth the number he got. No offense, Michael Pittman Jr., but he's gonna need help. He can't do it all himself. And Brock Bowers, I think, is probably the best tight end in the draft, and would definitely give him give Anthony Richardson one hell of a target over the center.
The Brock Bowers thing, I don't mean to cut anybody off. Just real quick, Kyle Pitts really screwed Brock Bowers for me. I think with I mean, everybody says, and Brock Bowers, hey, he's an athlete, man. He's going to come in and do some really good things. But I think drafting him in the early part of the first round, I think it's going to come back like a Kyle Pitts type thing, man. Because a lot of these teams pick him because he's the Ferrari, but yet you have a Ferrari that's stick, but you have a guy that doesn't know how to drive stick. And that's kind of what Brock
And
Bowers is to me.
that's when Kyle Pitts was drafted all the way that high. I said, who was sniffing what when they made that pick?
Yeah, it's the same thing with Brock Bowers.
I couldn't believe it. It was the wrong week to sniff that. They should have stopped sniffing glue before picking Kyle Pitts in the top 5.
Yeah.
But I also look at the quarterback play that Kyle Pitts has had and go, I mean, on Wishbone, we titled an episode of Wishbone, "What the hell is Desmond Ritter?" I mean, that's what Kyle Pitts has been working with, and I don't disagree with your thought process there. It's just for me, the talent for Bowers is right there, and that's why I'm with Mark. Also, the Colts, for me, you say they need secondary. The Colts don't have weapons. They don't have weapons. It's Michael Pittman and a bunch of dudes. And I know they got the kid from Cincinnati a couple of years ago, Alec Pierce, but he's a home run kind of guy. Bowers gives you a good tight end a nice option, and you can create America's favorite country band, the Florida Georgia Line in Indianapolis. Dan, what say you?
So like Rudy, I'm going defense, but I'm going to go with the edge guy. Jared Verse is who I'm picking. Someone to stop the offense, the run, receivers, get to the quarterback, you name it. I think that'd be a perfect guy for Indianapolis to go at 15.
We are moving right along. 16 mark belongs to the
Six.
Seattle Seahawks.
Shout out Nicholas Taylor because I know he's going to love to hear this. I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to rebuild that dominant defense, and this is where one of Rudy's picks early, a little earlier, goes up, and that's Lila Tulatu. I think he's a perfect fit for that Seattle defense. He's gonna be able to help create more pressure and be able to help bring back that. I hate to call it that, but even though it's what it was, the Legion of Boom. I would love to watch that defense play.
All right. Rudy, I'll go to you next on Seattle.
Yeah, so with Seattle, I think rebuilding the Legion of Boom, or whatever it was called back in the day, is obviously the thing to go right here. But I think a lot of, for mine right now, within the first 15 picks, I think a lot of the more dominant defensive players have already been off the board. So I kind of look at the offensive line here for Seattle. I mean, you got Charles Cross, you got Nick Harris, you got a few guys there. But I still think they need bolstering. You got Kenneth Walker, you still have Metcalf and Lockett. Eventually, I think they're going to go with a quarterback. I see them maybe grabbing Michael Penix later on in the draft. That's one guy that I do see staying in the Washington area. But this is, on a side note, this is where I think a trade gets made. I think Seattle does trade down, knowing they've got a lot of holes to fill on that defensive side. They're going to need more picks. But for this case right here, I actually have them taking Amarius Mims, offensive tackle out of Georgia. Again, you just got to get younger on the offensive line. You got to get big on the offensive line, and no better way to do it than taking off Amarius Mims.
Dan?
It will be an offensive tackle for me for Seattle, and it will be Troy Fautanu that will go to
Okay.
Hawks.
Stays up there.
Yeah, I think very comfortable environment for him. Why try to leave? And if I'm the Seahawks, I would make it happen. Anything to people though.
I went the same route as Mark. I went Liatu Latu because when I think of Seattle and that Legion of Boom defense, everyone thinks of the Legion of Boom. I think of Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett being able to get to the quarterback. And now under Mike McDonald, the new coach, where Baltimore's defense was unreal last year. Seattle was middle of the pack in sacks. Under Mike McDonald, they might be able to move up a little bit here. And there's your next kind of star pass rusher in the Pacific Northwest. All right, Dan, 17 belongs to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
The Jacksonville Jaguars, to me, will select good old. Trying to get the name here. I apologize. Quinion Mitchell, cornerback.
Okay.
Yeah, to me, I mean, not that it has nothing to do with them not trying to get a wide receiver or anything, but just beef up your defense a little bit more. I mean, why not? And then just rely on the offensive weapons you already have.
Well, based on what Houston and Tennessee have done this year, this offseason, you probably need as much corner depth as possible.
Yeah.
Rudy, where are you on the Fighting Doug Petersons?
Exactly what you said with Stephon Diggs now entering the conversation and making Houston just that much better of a team. You're gonna have to go both ways of both sides of the ball. You got to get some offensive firepowers when it comes to wide receivers, but you got a wide receiver depth in this draft, so you can wait on the wide receiver position. Here, you're gonna have to get a cornerback, and it could be Cooper DeJean, it could be Nate Wiggins for me, it could be Kool-Aid McKinstry. I want to say it's not a safe pick, but it's a pick that I like. I'm going to go with Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson. To me, he's just a little bit higher on my draft board over Kool-Aid McKinstry and Cooper DeJean, who's actually rising a lot of people's draft boards. But with Nate Wiggins, You get a guy that can cover. He's got a lot of polishing he still needs to do, but again, you got to have youth to compete with the youth that's going to be coming, especially with Houston with that kind of firepower they already have. Considering what Stephon Diggs is, the older wide receiver on that team. I mean, these teams are just going to get better and better. So start on the defensive side. I've got Nate Wiggins out of Clemson.
Are you concerned with Wiggins after he got hurt at the combine?
Yes and no. I think he'll be fine coming out of training camp. I think he should be okay. But if there's any concern there, then I see them probably going with Cooper DeJean more than anything. But for right now, considering barring injury, I think Nate Wiggins is the pick here.
Cooper DeJean, what's their favorite kind of mustard? Cooper DeJean. All right, Mark, what about you?
You know, I look at the Jacksonville Jaguars and I've seen what's left. I've seen what's there. And they just need one more piece on the defensive line to go along with Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. And I see Brian Murphy the second coming in here and working with that defensive line. That defensive line is probably one of the more well put together, but it's just missing one more edge piece. And I think he's what it's going to need to get a little bit more pressure to give that Jacksonville defense secondary some time to keep up instead of let everybody run past them.
All right, I want the same route as Dan. I want Quinyon Mitchell too. Here's the thing. When I look at the Jag defense, I don't know their corners. And I do know they cut Darius Williams, who went back to the Rams this offseason. But outside of that, I didn't know who the Jags corners were. Now I got to go up twice a year against a trio of DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, and Treylon Burks. Now I got to deal with Stephon Diggs twice a year. I need depth. Quinyon Mitchell, Rudy, you said he's your number one corner.
Yeah.
I think for me, if I'm the Jags and he's there, that's got to be your pick.
Yeah,
And corner as
100%.
a whole, I think has to be your thought process because you need a shutdown corner at some point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, Quinyon Mitchell, I mean, like I said, he's raw, but he's raw on the good side. Like it's not going to take him very long to get used to the NFL game. But I think if you're looking for that, I honestly I can't even say we have shutdown corners in this draft. I mean, you don't have a Sauce Gardner, you don't have any guys like that, Jalen Ramsey, or anything like that. But I think with Quinyon Mitchell, you're getting a guy that, he has to be on the right team at the right time. Is Jacksonville the right team for him? I don't know because I don't think he can be a number one corner just yet. That's why I had him going to Denver earlier because he's right along Patrick Surtain, and it makes a lot of sense for him to be drafted by a guy that's already a number one, or a team that has a number one.
Do you think he can grow into that role as a number one?
Yes. You got to give him at least, I think, a couple of seasons before he goes. He's kind of like the Falcons drafted Clark Phillips the third out of Utah last year. That guy was one of my favorite cornerbacks going into the draft. But again, he was paired with somebody that, he was paired with a team that didn't need a number one. But eventually you're going to see him starting to come around and be a shutdown corner. Same thing for Quinyon Mitchell. It just depends on where he goes. But if you want him to be a number one, it's going to take a little while.
Okay. All right, fair enough. All right. 18. I'll keep saying they are the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC. They are the Cincinnati Bengals, and they are a Joe Burrow wrist injury away from completely being done. So, Rudy, I'll give you the floor on the Bengals.
Yeah, to make the Bengals quick, I was going to go with offensive tackle. I mean, you have Fuaga there from Oregon State still. I mean, you see, you got a whole bunch, Graham. Jackson Powers Johnson, you have Troy Fontanu out of Washington. But I think they signed Orlando Brown already, and they've got Trent Brown. They made some good signings on the offensive line. They can wait till the second round to grab a lineman. So I'm going actually with an LSU guy to keep the LSU connection going here. That's giving them another wide receiver threat in the AFC, and that's Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU. I mean, you can't really deny the Tiger, connection that they all have there with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. Obviously, adding Brian Thomas Jr. as an LSU Tiger is going to help them a lot because you have no idea with T. Higgins. And not only that, when Trenton Irwin is your third wide receiver, you kind of got to upgrade that position pretty quick with a weapon like Joe Burrow.
And Tyler Boyd is still out on the free agent market.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark?
Mike, you said it perfectly. The Bengals are a Joe Burrow wrist injury away from making it to where they need, and they got to protect him a little bit more. And this is where one of the earlier picks have gone, but I have Amarius Mims coming to protect Joe Burrow, to give him that little more time to get back on track with Chase. Mind you, right now, that's the only one there, but we'll see what really transpires over the next few months after the draft.
Dan.
So I'm actually on the same boat with Rudy here.
Mhm.
I really think another wide receiver would do them great. And to me, Ryan Thomas Jr. is a big key for the Bengals. Another threat in the passing game that Joe Burrow can use. I'll take him at 18.
Yeah, I'm with you guys there. I think receiver's the pick because let's be real honest. We heard T. Higgins request the trade. And even if the Bengals don't decide to move him, he's not back there next year. A guy like a Brian Thomas or whoever it is can move right into that role next year. And I kind of liked Rudy's idea of the LSU connection. Then my mind went completely fantasy and was like, oh man, now the Bengals need to trade for Justin Jefferson and create the
Yeah,
Trinity.
right.
That's the thing with Minnesota. You're literally in a complete rebuild. I mean, I'm taking calls on Justin Jefferson right now because I firmly believe that you're not going to pay. It's the Dallas Cowboy thing, Mark. I mean, you're not paying Dak because you have to pay CD. You have to pay Micah. You don't want to pay Dak right now because if you do, you're going to lose one of those guys. I mean, it's kind of like with Minnesota. You have Jordan Addison. He can be a number one. So
Right.
take calls
And
on
you're
Justin
redoing
Jefferson.
Minnesota's rebuilding completely.
Yeah.
As much as it would kill every Minnesota fan as they've watched one after another number one wide receiver leave them. But why not pick up what you can for Jefferson now if you're gonna rebuild?
Yeah, exactly. That's the way I feel.
Man, listen, if Justin Jefferson's getting moved, it's a whole nother podcast. That's a whole nother show. It's a whole nother manifestation.
Imagine how many
of
people
what-
I pissed off with the Dak Prescott idea. I mean, that needs to be happening right now.
Well, I don't think you're pissing anyone off with the Dak thing. And Mark can attest to this because I wrote it for the website about projected Dak spots for next year. Because what Mark said, I think, is true. If Dak doesn't get to the NFC title game, he's out. And Mike
Yeah.
McCarthy's back to the buffet line.
Right.
Yeah.
McCarthy will be done as well. And you're gonna see Trey Lance will emerge as the Dallas starting QB next year if Prescott does not make it to the championship.
I don't think it's Trey Lance, buddy.
No. I
Ugh.
mean, Trey
Well-
Lance is not. I'll be honest.
It might be a 1-year solution, but the only thing that I have my heart now set on is somehow, some way, Dallas and Pittsburgh can work out a deal and bring
Russell
Justin
Wilson or
Fields to
Russell
Dallas.
Wilson?
No, I want Justin Fields.
Yeah, no, I don't think that happened.
It's not going to happen. I said dream wish. Come on.
All right. Well, listen, a lot of people had dreams once. Sean McVay had a dream he won a Super Bowl, then he did. That's my segue of the Rams are at 19, Mark.
Here, look, the Rams have done everything they needed to do this offseason and shoring up that line with picking up Dotson and Jonah Jackson. I think they get Jackson Powers Johnson here to play the inside part to give Stafford all the time he's going to need to hit Puka and Cup all day. That's where I see them going as another lineman, even though they really did spend a lot on the line as it was.
All right, Rudy.
Yeah, so the biggest thing with the Rams was they had a really good offseason, like really good offseason so far. And then it kind of derailed itself with Aaron Donald retiring. So as much as I'd like to see them go offensive line here, you have Grant Barton, Jackson Power Johnson. You got a lot of great players there for them. I think they're going to go to the Illinois camp and take Jersey Newton out of Illinois because you've got to get a pass rusher to replace Aaron Donald, and it's kind of hit or miss. It could be him or Byron Murphy out of Texas. but I like Newton a whole lot. He's a really good run defender. His hands are great. He's really quick off the ball. He tackles tremendous. He's a great tackler. So I think Jerzon Newton out of Illinois is a pick for the Rams here.
Okay, so quickly, because you said it could be him or Murphy.
Mhm.
What's your biggest difference between those two guys?
I honestly, they are practically the same player. I just saw more of Newton uh, be more consistent throughout the year, as Murphy had a little bit of sputter here and there. But when you put it on paper, you look at it on stats and everything. To me, I mean, just reports and everything, it's basically the same player. So it's kind of like, Two-Face from Batman. Just flip a coin. It's going to land on one player. Obviously, it's a one-sided coin. So you're going to land on one player, and I think it's going to be Newton. But honestly, if they go with Murphy, there's no issues with that. They are pretty much the identical player.
Okay. I thought you were going to say he's related to Sir Isaac Newton, and that was going to be the end of it. But no. Dan,
So I do have Byron Murphy going here to the Rams. I do like his presence on the defensive line, and to me, it makes more sense for the Rams to go in the defensive route, given the fact that they've already had such a great offseason and they addressed the needs that they need to address. Just add on to it, Byron Murphy, second at 19.
yeah, my thing about the defensive line is I have to assume Aaron Donald remains retired. And there's a part of me that wants to say in training camp, Aaron Donald's coming back because Aaron Donald is such a freaking beast.
Yeah.
I went like Mark, I went the offensive line because I think whether it's Stafford, for some reason they have Garoppolo as the backup. I went Troy Fatanu, the Washington guy. Listen, a little versatile, could play inside or outside. I do love what they've done this offseason. And this offense, if Stafford's healthy, this offense could be really good with Nakua, Cooper Kupp. Hopefully they get Tyler Higbee back at some point, and then they run the ball well with Kyron Williams. The Rams, despite their actions of F them picks of a couple of years ago, they're right back.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. 20. The Fighting Mike Tomlin stand still have not had a losing season. And they'll have a new quarterback. Dan.
Who's leading this one? Oh, I'm sorry, Danny Buck.
I thought I said Dan. If I didn't, I apologize.
Oh, my internet's not stable.
Somehow this is Moser's fault as well.
Yeah, you know what? Well, might as well. So we're at the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I'm not-
Pittsburgh.
Okay, cool. It's going to be Jackson Powers Johnson.
All right, so working the offensive line.
Staying with the offensive line trend here.
All right. Old ops guy.
This is where I have Quinion Mitchell going. I see the absolute need for Pittsburgh needing a top shutdown corner, especially with what they have to deal with already. I like Nate Wiggins as well, but I think Quinion Mitchell is just the better of the two better of the two picks in this case, and I think Quinion Mitchell really will make a good upgrade for Pittsburgh.
Rudy.
Yeah, quarterback seems to be really good right here, but I think a lot of people sleep on Joey Porter Jr. a lot. I mean, he can be a shutdown corner out of Penn State. So I'm going offensive line. I'm going to Oregon State here with Talise Fuaga. There, I like Grant Barton. I like JPJ here as well. They're going to need to fill that center position. But again, I think those guys are probably going to be available later on in the draft. Either one of those guys. Plus, you got a whole bunch more. But I think you just take the best offensive lineman in the draft that's left right now, and that's Fuaga out of Oregon State.
Is there any thought of maybe, because you took Newton on the last one, any thought of Byron Murphy here? Because Cam Hayward's getting up there too.
Yeah, I think Murphy would be a good pick here. I think you've still got a lot of he's still got a lot of players left available, I think, when it comes to like the defensive line and stuff like that. So I think they can afford to wait a little bit on this one. But it could go either way for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I went Nate Wiggins just because I felt him and Porter are two young corners, and you kind of have. I'm going to do an inverse here. Denver had Judy and Sutton, those two young receivers who you both would think are studs. Pittsburgh could do the same thing at corner. And when they were really good under Bill Cowher, they had Ike Taylor, Brian McFadden, and then Ryan Clark and Troy Polamalu. Build that really good secondary. They've already got Minka Fitzpatrick. You brought up Porter. Bring in Nate Wiggins, another fast corner, because you got to keep up now with Jamar Chase, Higgins. Cleveland just added Judy to go with Amari Cooper. And Baltimore's got Zay Flowers. So I think that's why I would think about corner. But Pittsburgh, it feels like always is defense in the first round.
Yeah.
That's my other thing.
It's kind of hard because do y'all guys feel I felt this going into the offseason with Pittsburgh is like they're still a 500 team, they still have a winning record, but this is one of those teams that just has so many positions that have to be upgraded. And it's one of those drafts where I feel Pittsburgh maybe should trade down and just start stockpiling on picks because one player is not going to make that much of a difference on this team.
Here's my biggest thing with Pittsburgh, and I found this really confusing because I love signing the Russ deal for 1.2. But to me, you're either in on Russ or you're in on Justin Fields because I don't get sitting Justin Fields on the bench because you have to evaluate him in order to pick up that 5th-year option and then eventually pay him whatever he's gonna want to make. So why are you in on both of these guys? Just pick a lane and say that's how we're committed. And I get it, you're paying Russ close to nothing, but Russell Wilson's gonna want to play somewhere. He's not gonna want to watch Justin Fields run around.
Yeah. Makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, I honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they even go, man, I hate to say it, but if they trade down, grab a couple of second round picks from the team and go quarterback early because you've got Russ, you've got Justin Fields, but I don't think Tomlin is, I don't think he's sold on either guy to lead his team.
Yeah,
to be
he
honest with
said
you.
Russell Wilson's pole position, basically pole leader.
Yeah.
So, Mark, Dan, any thoughts here?
No.
No, you don't care about Russell Wilson.
No, it's not that I don't care about Russell Wilson. It's just ever since the man was told to throw the ball on the 1-yard line, I have lost all the respect in the world for him.
Well,
I'm sorry. I hate
Pete
to be
just hand the ball to Marshawn. Pete.
John.
Well,
Even the ref said, "Why didn't they hand it off?"
well, it wasn't.
Even Shohei's bookie.
It wasn't Russ's call though. I mean,
No, I know, but even he should have said, "What is he off this?" Pardon me, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna drop it. What is he off his fucking mind?
Oh my god.
Moving us into 21 here. But Mike's laughing. We're gonna.
You want to go first? Go first on 20.
Yeah, I'm gonna go first because it's the sushi team. You know, it's the good old Finns of Miami, and for as many times I've seen them have to stuff bubble padding into Tua's head to keep him from getting concussions, I don't see any reason why the Miami Dolphins are not selecting Tyler Guyton to help protect the outside, because if anything, that is where Miami needs to get protection from, is on that outside edge, to give Tua a little bit more time in the pocket where he is just so good.
Dan.
okay, this is where I will send Talise Fuaga over. Miami, first of all, it seems like a name that Miami would
That's
choose.
true. That's fair. That's fair. Very fair.
But no, anything to help out Tua, just a little bit of help. Doesn't need much. Tua has done a phenomenal job under Mike McDaniel. I think that continues. I don't care who they lost. I think it continues next season, and Fuaga is going to be part of that mold.
Rudy.
So I love the offensive line. This is where, JPJ goes, Graham Barton, any of these guys, Tyler Guyton, Mark mentioned him. I mean, everybody can go offensive line here to protect Tua, but I don't think you can protect Tua to protect him from anything. I mean, the guy can, run into his car door and he's going to get a concussion. So I think you just stick to best player available. And one player that they do need, in my opinion, is
I'm sorry,
defensive
I found that
line help.
kind of funny because Mike's a diehard Dolphin fan.
Well,
Just because Mike's a diehard Dolphin fan,
You
I
know,
love that, Rudy. Thank you.
I
So I ran
apologize for
into a
that.
car door one
No,
day.
no, it's finally somebody got the better of Mike for once.
But I think they go with a Longhorn here, and that's Byron Murphy, the second. They got to get better on the defensive side of the ball. They can put up points, man. You got Tyreek Hill, you've got a great show on one of the greatest offensive shows on turf, basically, when Tua is healthy, and they're able to get passes off, and the offense just goes, it just runs, but. What I think is what they're going to need help is on the defensive side, because can they put up points? Yes. Can they stop other teams putting up points? No. They got to get to the quarterback. They got to make it tough for a lot of these AFC guys. The better quarterbacks are in the AFC. So you got to be able to get to the quarterback. I think Byron Murphy helps them tremendously out of Texas.
And you could see him put up production like Justin Matabuki did in Baltimore under Anthony Weaver, the new DC of the Dolphins.
Mhm.
I want the offensive line too, though. Listen. I've been around too long to see a crappy offensive line. Get me JPJ from Oregon.
That's a good one. I really like that.
To me, that's your center for the next, hopefully, 10 years.
Then you
A
won't have to
duck
worry about
turns
Tua
into a
running into a
dolphin.
Yugo.
I've never seen it done before, but maybe there's a fairy godmother who can make that happen. But
I don't know with the amount of people that Tyreek Hill kind of created a new family tree with was more than times Tua had concussions. So it's kind of interesting.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about people with families. I mean, look at Antonio Cromartie, man.
I mean,
Jeez. I mean, Philip Rivers could
I was
build a
gonna
whole
say,
offense around his
Well, Phil
kids.
Rivers has a whole football team. So.
yeah, Phillip Rivers. I mean, that's the greatest, income tax story in the world, right there. With
My
his guy
God.
coming in.
Philip Rivers' real Hail Mary, and Mary just comes downstairs. What's up? You want another kid? Oh boy! All right, I apologize. That out of control. All right, that is 11 through 21. You guys want to recap what you got?
I was just gonna say, wouldn't it be hilarious if we pop on NFL Sunday and then the first commercial shown by CBS or somebody is Philip Rivers doing a Trojan condom commercial? That would be hilarious.
Oh my god. Philip Rivers, the reason why Philip Rivers, the reason why men get vasectomy.
Yeah, he's like, I am that 3% where it doesn't work.
Does that mean we have Tyreek Hill doing birth control commercials?
Yeah, I mean,
Also,
a lot of these
Adrian
guys seem to
Peterson's giving
Plan
parental
B,
advice.
Plan B for Tyreek Hill.
Oh my god. Jesus Christ.
Look,
Mark-
I really want to thank Rudy for being
Mhm.
here with us for picks 11 through 21 here on the Sports Ascending Network in conjunction with Sweep the League. Rudy, thank you for coming on tonight.
Yeah.
Next week we will be doing the final 10 before we will be actually coming back and making complete asses of me, Mike, and Dan. Rudy actually knows what he's doing, so he's going to have the highest percentage. But here comes the kicker. When we do our prediction show and what the final one is, Mike is going to be writing this down, or one of our guys are going to be writing this down. Winner with the highest amount of picks wins $50 from the dugout of Millwood.
Oh, all right.
Cool.
Winner with, and if there's a trade and you get screwed by it, hey, it sucks to be me.
All
But
right.
you know it's going to be me. I'm going to be done after pick one.
All right. That'll do it for this special edition on the Sports Insanity Network, our 2024 NFL draft mock draft special. As Mark said, we'll do 22 through 32 next week. But until then, Mark, Dan, Rudy, I'm Mike. We'll talk to y'all next week. Have a good one, everybody.